Now that Alabama has this new offensive coordinator, is Jimmy Stein digging Grubb?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama, AHSA Radio Network's Luke Robinson. That's me. Bama Online's Jimmy Stein. That's him. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I'll talk about FanDuel in just a bit. Thank you, everydayers, for being here every day, and thank you, newbies, for being here today. I hope you got my joke at the very beginning where I said, is Jimmy digging grub? Because there is a grub worm that some people fish with. At least they used to when I used to fish back when I was about 6. So, and that was 46 years ago, so maybe they don't anymore. But Ryan Grubb is officially the offensive coordinator for the University of Alabama again. And I say again because he was here for, I don't know, not even a cup of coffee. Like they didn't have, he just gave the coffee order. They didn't have time to bring him the coffee itself. He was here so quickly last time. But I love this hire, Jimmy. I think it's great. I'm surprised how tight-lipped this whole thing was, that it just comes out on a Sunday night and everybody's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I mean, I had to go emergency podcast solo because you already had other plans. If you had known Ryan Grubb was going to be hired, you wouldn't have gone to dinner with your sister. Don't be crazy. You wouldn't have done that. But it is what it is. I think it's a great hire. What do you think?
Well, it certainly is a great hire in the sense that Ryan Grubb is one of the more proven offensive coordinators in college football. I mean, he's a guy from coast to coast who's well known as, okay, here's one of the better OCs in the sport. I think when Greg Byrne put Kalen DeBoer at the top of his wish list, Grubb was sort of part of the deal, right? I mean, that's why you're interested in Kalen DeBoer, because Grubb comes with. And then there was the extremely bizarre circumstance where not only did an NFL team come calling, the NFL team in the town he was already coaching college football came calling. So, no one's going to turn that down. No, I don't think. It's hard to find any coach in the world today that's going to choose college football over the NFL. I mean, that was just a no-brainer for Grubb to do. Then Seattle didn't work out. But this is a big hire. It's an upgrade. And I'm not anti-Nick Sheridan like some, or I think there was just a few really, but I'm not anti-Nick Sheridan at all. I think Sheridan did a good job with what he was working with under the circumstances in which he was working. I think he did a good job, but this is an upgrade. And I can prove it just simply by this. The NFL wasn't calling for Nick Sheridan. Not yet. They might one day, but Nick Sheridan was not the subject of NFL interest, nor if Nick Sheridan was available in the college market, would he get a top 10 type, top 15 type job. So Ryan Grubb would. Ryan Grubb could also be hired, quote, at an Ohio State, at a Georgia, at a Texas. I mean, he's that level of OC. So in that sense, it's most assuredly an upgrade. Alabama is better at offensive coordinator today than they were 2 days ago. And in terms of the delay, in terms of why it happened, why did that take so long? Well, to me, it's almost an obvious answer. He was interested in NFL OC jobs. There were some NFL OC jobs that were open. I don't know that he interviewed or not, or was a finalist or not. I don't know. I just know this. Pretty much every sane coach in America would choose the NFL over the college game. And Grubb,
especially now.
Yeah, today. Today. I mean, 5 years ago, maybe that's a closer call. But now it's 100-0. So I'm sure Ryan Grubb, before he accepted the Alabama job, wanted to see what might be out there for him NFL wise before accepting, Alabama's offer. But yeah, win-win, no doubt for Alabama. Again, better at OC today than they were 2 days ago. And I'm not an anti-Nick Sheridan guy at all.
Well, and I think that's if if you're, it's sort of like having that card, when you're dating somebody and they're like, well, who's your pass? Who's your free pass? Well, if yours is Jennifer Aniston or something, maybe I'm dating myself, but Jennifer Aniston's a pretty good call. If you're dating somebody and or George Costanza wanted to go out with Marissa Tomei, but he was already engaged to Susan, and Marissa Tomei just happened to like fat, short, stocky, bald men who were unemployed, and George was like, "Oh my God,
that's in real life."
And yeah, that really does happen a lot in real life.
Is Marissa Tomei really interested in that in real life? I'd be curious.
I'm going to say no. I'm not going to go out on a limb, but we'll see. I mean, she might have plenty of money, and she might be like, "Hey, I'm going to go against the norm." But so if you got that free pass, then you tell Nick Sheridan. I mean, Marissa Tomei is the offensive coordinator at Seattle. I got to go get Marissa Tomei, who is beautiful and a pretty doggone good offensive coordinator who's well established. And I want you here. Don't think I don't want you here, but this was my pass. This was my free pass. I'm taking it, and I'm going to put you back at quarterback coach. And I'm not necessarily demoting you, even though I kind of am. Okay. It's a demotion, but I don't want you to look at it like that. Well, like we'd all.
I'm sure he is. Just like Susan would have looked at what happened as a demotion. Though the irony to the whole Marissa Tomei Susan thing is Costanza was already out kicking his coverage with Susan, frankly.
That's a good point.
He was already over his head with Susan, who everyone forgot as her character evolved over the years, was initially a high-paid NBC executive that helped decide which programs aired on NBC. That's got to be a high-paying job.
Yeah, and I don't think it was clear at the very beginning that she came from like this uber-rich family. That came later. But
on top of that, yeah. And NBC. I mean, if you're at NBC and you're like, you know what? We're going to put Found on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. and you're just in charge of making that decision, that's 7 figures, right?
It's got to be.
Bigger job.
I do love the idea that there's some people who've never listened to our podcast. They're like, what the hell are they talking about?
Some people listen to podcasts.
Bottom line,
we're pretty old.
What you've learned from all this, Ryan Grubb is the Marissa Tomei. And that's fair.
Nick Sheridan is a strong Susan.
He's better looking than Susan. And I'm pretty sure he wouldn't die by licking stamps. So I think there's a lot of positivity here. Now, here's the question. Number one, here's 2 questions. Do you think Nick Sheridan is going to be cool with this? Like he'll actually stick around. He'll actually be here for a while. Or do you think he's looking to jump? And number 2, what player benefits the most from this? And I said it in the solo podcast last night that, okay, I could make the argument that all players benefit from this. Now, if you want to say somebody like a Ryan Williams, or Jeremy Bernard, okay, I get it. But I'm thinking more specifically about quarterbacks. And I do think they all kind of benefit from this. But I really think that Keelan Russell benefits from this in the sense, or Austin Mack, if you want to go that route, because I think it brings the baseline more even for everybody. Whereas Ty Simpson definitely has a leg up. You and I have even said we think Ty Simpson is going to be the starter. Don't think we're jumping off the Ty Simpson train because of this. We're still on the train, but I do think his experience may be offset a little bit by the fact that we now have a brand new offensive coordinator who may be like, hey, it's all in the, we're going to take this as everybody starting from the same spot now, regardless of experience.
No, that's true. I do think it's almost a reset at the quarterback position because Nick Sheridan had been there a year. Nick Sheridan had this idea. Nick Sheridan, he recruited Keelan Russell. He picked him out. He's coached Ty for a year. Now he's coached Austin Mack for a year. But I think the beneficiary here is Austin Mack, is who I would say is who benefits the most. Not that, like Luke said, I'm not changing my, quote, prediction of who's going to be the starting quarterback in 2025. I think it's going to be Ty Simpson. But I do think Austin Mack is the most immediate beneficiary simply because Ryan Grubb knows him. Ryan Grubb recruited Austin Mack to Washington, coached him at Washington, and now is coaching him again at Alabama. So I think that Austin Mack has to be super comfortable with this. And I'm sure now that Ryan Grubb's back in Tuscaloosa, he walks into the room. He's like, I know this guy. Hey, I know you. And he's never coached Ty Simpson a single day in his life. And he didn't pick out Keelan Russell like Nick Sheridan did. So I think Austin Mack benefits here, but that doesn't change my pick. Like Luke said, I think it's going to be Ty Simpson this upcoming fall, and I think it will eventually be Keelan Russell. And I also think Austin Mack is a really good player. I think Austin Mack is going to develop into a really good football player, but my predictions, if you want to call it that, is Ty Simpson is going to be the quarterback this year, followed by Keelan Russell. Is what I think is going to happen.
You sort of made a sound at the beginning of that soliloquy, and I haven't heard a snort like that since I was back at the fraternity house in Alabama in '93. I'm just letting you know.
Interesting. Interesting, because I've never
the last snort I heard like that.
Literally,
there was a party.
That's funny. I don't think I guess I wouldn't admit it on air, but no, I've never done that. I've never done that.
So, I'm so scared.
Not my thing. My sinuses are too bad.
I'm with you. I'm 100% behind you, and I do it all the time. And I've said this many, many times that I'm hyper. Still at 52, I'm hyper. That's how you'll know I'm dead, is that Luke will just not be moving. Like, people have to stop me from my legs moving. I got that restless leg syndrome even during the day, at night, whatever. But I'm hyper. I always have been. I talk really fast. I had massive nosebleeds at Alabama for no reason, mostly probably due to stress. And I was in an old row fraternity, namely SAE. I might as well go ahead and say it doesn't matter. And people would come up to me and go, that guy is on something at all times. And I have never smoked a doobie. In fact, that's how non-druggy I am. I still call them doobies. And I know that's not what people call them anymore.
Yeah, I think old people in the 80s called them that. If you were old in the 80s, you called them that. And that's
they did on Scooby-Doo too, I think.
Yeah.
All right. So we're back to FanDuel because we love FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long, y'all. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field. And the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win 200 in bonus bets and for the Super Bowl, that's like icing on the cake, man. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Just bet $5. And if you win, you score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. Or, as Gronk says in that commercial, Super Bowl licks, which I think is pretty funny. You get it right because it's LIX.
Yeah, it is. That's kind of funny.
I was wondering
why are we going to keep doing that with Super Bowls, by the way? What they all have a number and it's a Roman numeral, and I'm not saying it's played out. I guess it's just what we're going to do forever, right? But I'm not really sure why. We don't do World Series 204.
That's a good point. I don't know. I just, but they've done pretty well with the Roman numeral. And again, then let me tell you what the NFL doesn't need it is advice from us. They're fine.
Like, for instance, here's a good question. Like, because you're an NFL fan, just like me. We're big NFL fans. Have you ever referred to a Super Bowl by its number?
No, but I'll say this.
Did you even know
the only advice I would give the NFL is to not listen to us. That's just like a catch-22, but I get it.
I'm just saying, does anybody say, boy, do you remember that Cowboys-Broncos Super Bowl in the 80s? That was Super Bowl 23. That was great. I mean, who says that? They just say that year the Cowboys played the Broncos.
No, you're right. Nobody does say that. That is 100%. But I'll tell you some things people do say. Alabama had a heck of a recruiting weekend. They rolled out the red carpet. Do you think was Ryan Grubb on campus at all this weekend? And there's no way he met any of these recruits. There's no way.
My answer is I do not know that. And that is a great question. my guess would be absolutely he was. And I don't know that he.
But he didn't meet any of the recruits. That would have leaked 100%. Nobody can keep that stuff secret.
I don't know that he would have met with recruits as I'm Ryan Grubb, I'm your offensive coordinator, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was, quote, around. And that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, this stuff doesn't happen in an instant. It's been happening over time for a while. I thought DeBoer was asked this question in Mobile a few days ago at Senior Bowl practice. He was asked about Ryan Grubb, and he gave a long non-answer while admitting that, of course, Grubb, he thought very highly of him. But I'm guessing at the time, Grubb had to remove his name from other NFL jobs or had to be removed from other NFL OC openings before this could go forward. But in terms of was Grubb in Tuscaloosa this weekend, I think there's an excellent chance that he was.
Yeah, I believe he was too, but there were a lot of big-time players there as well.
Oh, gosh.
And Alabama made some pretty serious moves, it sounds like. So I'm ecstatic after the weekend. I feel like a lot of good things happened in Tuscaloosa.
Oh, absolutely. And again, we talked about this on the show that we did, the last show. This was a lot more like the Champions Cookout than Junior Day in terms of Champions Cookout every summer is when Alabama sort of brings in the dudes they want to sign and tries to build a camaraderie with them. Like, y'all are the group. This is the group we want. And sort of felt that way this weekend.
All right, so of the guys we haven't discussed, who do you think Alabama made the biggest move with? Now, last episode we discussed Crowell, EJ. We'll just call him EJ. We discussed him for sure. We discussed Tank Jones for a minute. But, I mean, who else? Sedarian Morgan we talked about. Who else out there?
I would say Brandon Arrington.
Yeah, we talked about him, but I think that's also a good call. He did sound like the most blown away from the visit.
Well, considering this is a 5-star from California, I mean, that's not who you would think you would, make up all this ground with or come out on top. That's a tough guy to sign, but it does seem like Arrington had a big time.
Well, why is it a tough guy to sign? Because we've done it before.
I think it's because I grew up in the non-Nick Saban era when signing a, quote, 5-star from California was virtually impossible before Nick Saban. But then Saban helped change the world and the recruiting world shrunk. And now kids going cross country to play is a lot more commonplace. It's still kind of hard for us old heads to wrap my head around because this just used to never happen. Now it's more commonplace. But and the way I think of it is just this guy's got to come so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. But I think I think we need to, again, change our way of thinking. I tell this to an Auburn friend of mine all the time. He does an Auburn show, and he always says, I feel like I'm living in a new reality with the way Auburn and Alabama are with basketball. I said, you need to quit thinking that way. Alabama and Auburn have been good for years now. I mean, really good, like better than your average blue bloods. Like we're two of the top 8 programs in the country over the last 5-6 years. I mean, maybe it's only 4 years or whatever, but I think it's 5 or 6. And I think people need to quit being blown away and surprised at how well Alabama and Auburn are doing in basketball. And I think we need to quit being blown away when we still go out there and get a dude from California. Now, Trenton Henderson, the nation's number 4 edge rusher on BOL, had an article said, man, I'm loving Alabama. This guy, he's locked in an official visit for a little bit later on. And this is another guy that Alabama made a strong move with.
Yeah, and Pensacola's practically almost practically an in-state guy. It's like, a guy from maybe like Meridian, Mississippi, which is, an hour from the border or someplace, he's close by. Alabama's had some recruiting success in Pensacola. That should be less surprising than a 5-star in California, but Luke's right. I mean, at some point I'll stop being surprised by it. But obviously even DeBoer last year when like Dijon Lee, who's a really good, by the way, comparison to Brandon Arrington. I don't think they're exactly alike as players, but they're the same type rated player. I mean, Brandon Arrington and Dijon Lee would be ranked about the same and both being from California. But Henderson from Pensacola, He's the 4th ranked edge guy. I think, though, if you watch the tape, you're like, wait, there's 3 guys better than this. I mean, he's a freakishly talented kid. He's going to be very difficult to sign, just in the sense that pass rushers, do really well on the NIL market, of course. And Florida is high profile, even in the Panhandle. So it's going to be tough to sign either one of those kids. But they both came out of this visit, I don't know, favoring Alabama might be the right word to use, for now. And I do think both will be in Tuscaloosa this summer for official visits. And boy, you land them, you're not only landing good players. For those who care about recruiting rankings, these are recruit ranking steroid shots in terms of what they do for your ranking, kids that high. But boy, what a job. And how about this? Let's give a shout out to DeBoer. He recruited well last year when he was brand new, and it was, hey, the new guy's here, and this exciting. He goes 9-4, and there's fair questions out there. There's fair doubts out there about, hey, is this going to work? And you can't go 9-4 at Alabama every year and expect to be the coach at Alabama forever. Yet recruiting has not suffered at all in terms of the quality player that's highly interested in Alabama, is indicated by this past weekend. Recruiting has not been dinged at all. So shout out to Kalen DeBoer and Courtney Morgan for not keeping Alabama's head above water, but for swimming like Michael Phelps, despite the 9-4 record. And Luke, that the Auburns and the Floridas and the Georgias and the Tennessees that are recruiting these kids are saying, you going to sign up to go play for DeBoer at Alabama? I mean, how do you know who's going to be the coach there? If he goes 9-4 again, they're going to fire him. That's what those guys are telling these recruits, and they're still out there, recruiting side by side with the other elite programs in the country.
The only thing I'd say about that is, outside of Kirby Smart, I bet you Kalen DeBoer is saying, yeah, you want to go play for him? You don't know that he's going to be here either. And I'm including Ryan Day.
Yeah, no, and I agree that Ryan Day's support right now is a mile wide and an inch thick.
Let's finish it off with a little hoops. We talked about Alabama getting the big win over Georgia, looking good doing it. We also talked a little bit about how Arkansas is just what we thought. They're going to get better by the time we get to them this Saturday. Now, here's down the stretch, this is getting interesting. It's going to be a Bama-Auburn thing to the SEC title. I want to win the SEC title. I really do. I understand it's also devalued. I hate that it's devalued, but I know that it is. Because if you win the SEC regular season and then go in the tournament and lose in the Sweet 16 or even Elite 8, or God forbid earlier than that, people are going to look at it like a failure. And I don't like that at all, but that's the way it is. So I would much rather have a Final Four versus a SEC regular season title. I don't think those things are mutually exclusive, though. I think we can get them both. It's going to be tough. I look at our schedule coming down the stretch. We had 3 unranked teams in a row. One of them was Georgia. They're out of the way. But now we go to Arkansas, who's clearly playing better, and we go to Texas, also playing better. In fact, I would argue they haven't been playing poorly. They had a tough schedule, and they had a tough go of it. They lost a tough one at Auburn. Against Auburn at home. That's going to be a tough game. Now, I think we can win both of those games, and it would certainly behoove us to. But Auburn's got to go to Vandy Tuesday, the night we play at Texas before the big Iron Bowl of basketball in Tuscaloosa. Those are 2 slippery games for both the top teams in the conference. I'll tell you something else that maybe nobody else saw, because it was a Texas Tech Houston thing, and it was at Houston. Kudos to Texas Tech for winning that game. That you don't go to Houston and beat them. They had like a 33-game home winning streak. But there was a call in that game at the very beginning where JT Toppin, he sort of turns his body and like accidentally kicks a Houston player in the place you don't want to be kicked. You never don't want to be kicked anywhere, but you really don't want to be kicked here. And I could totally see. I think any reasonable person would say, yeah, that was completely accidental and there was no intention to harm anybody. and they called it a flagrant 2, and I think he was ejected. And I've decided, okay, thank goodness it's not just officials that do Alabama games. It's so countrywide that these officials don't know what the heck's going on. They don't know really what to call. We need more oversight. I'm not saying the officials were bought. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying they don't really know what to do either. And we need to have more either training or more oversight in this in game so that somebody can say, y'all, that is crazy that you are going to make that determination. Don't do it. Now, Texas Tech ended up winning the game anyway, which is bananas. But that's just something I wanted to bring up because, boy, when you watch some of this officiating, and I get it, it's a hard job. I sat on the floor for the Georgia game, and some people that were around me, they cussed the officials at every turn. It didn't matter if it was a good call, bad call. They couldn't even see the call. If it was a whistle or a non-whistle, every time they yelled out something offensive to the official. But, man, I'm beginning to be like, y'all might deserve this.
So cussing the officials at the Alabama-Georgia game is well deserved because the Texas Tech Houston officials were so bad. But
yes.
My first thought with the Texas Tech Houston thing is I can't believe that SEC football officials get to also officiate basketball and other conferences when football season's over. But, I do think in terms of Alabama and Auburn fighting down the stretch, I mean, Auburn obviously up by one game. Alabama's schedule is so brutal. I don't know that you're going to catch Auburn. But what I really want to agree with you here on your diatribe is the devaluing of the SEC championship, because it's happened in football too, where our fan base only cares about the national championship. I don't think that's true of all fans, but I know this. When I've referred to last year's team as a championship football team, I referred to them one time as a championship football team because they won the SEC championship. I'm talking about the 2023 Alabama team that won the SEC, and I said they were champions, and I got sort of attacked for that. And it really saddens me because in football or basketball, and basketball it's even harder because there's so many games, there's so many good teams this year, but the devaluing of a conference championship in the name of we only care about the national championship is really sad because it's one hell of an accomplishment. One hell of an accomplishment to win this league in any sport with the money that's put into it by all these schools, the effort that is put into it by all these schools to come out on top in this league is a hell of an accomplishment. I don't care what sport you're talking about. And it devaluing it is not fair and it's illogical. It's pretty dumb, to be honest. I mean, it's a big deal. Teams are trying. They're spending. How much money is Auburn basketball spending on trying to win big between what they pay their coaches and the assistants and the NIL money and the recruiting and their new, I guess Neville Arena's 10 years old by now, but I'm just saying it's a heck of an achievement to win the SEC. And I'm going to give major kudos to whoever does it, especially Alabama, because I think we've only won the SEC about 8 times ever.
It just dawned on me, like, if you win Ms. Alabama and then don't win Ms. America, which ironically I think Ms. Alabama is Ms. America this year, people are like, well, you didn't win the whole thing. If you're Ms. Alabama, that's a big deal. And then if you go to the Ms. America pageant, it's a big deal. I feel like
Miss Enterprise is a big deal, or Miss Montgomery, or Miss Homewood.
All those things are big deals.
That's a big
and they
deal.
should be. And if you finish second in Ms. Homewood, you should be
diminishing accomplishment at all. I mean, that's what we do now. We diminish accomplishment.
That is so true. Now, one other thing I wanted to bring up, just listen to it. I mean, I know people can go to CBS or ESPN and see this, but Gary Parrish for CBS, for instance, does his own top 25, right? This is the top 25, and this is how just absurd the SEC is this year. Auburn at 1. Now, Duke is at 2, and I'll tell you something. I mean,
that's a good team.
If you're Duke, I still would put Auburn 1. There's no doubt, even though Duke beat them. But I mean, if you're Duke, you might say, like, if Auburn just slips up just a little bit, we're getting that one spot. And I'm with them, but I also wholeheartedly admit Auburn's schedule is tougher than Duke's. Now, Bama at 3, Tennessee at 4. Tennessee at 4, despite the fact they lost a midweek game at home to Kentucky, who later on lost to Arkansas because they beat up on Florida so badly. Then Florida at 5, who, by the way, got beat by 20 at Tennessee. They're still at 5.
4 of the top 5 are SEC teams.
Then Iowa State
in Harris's opinion.
Iowa State at 6, who lost by 19 at home to Kansas State.
I watched some of that. It was bizarre.
That is weird. And they did it at home. And I mean, if you're Tennessee or Florida and you still get the benefit of the doubt, I think you go, see what we're talking about. We hadn't lost by 20 at home. You know, we lost on the road to each other by 30 and 20.
Kansas State's pretty average.
Yeah. Kansas State is very average. Then you got Kentucky at 9. Again, Kentucky just lost at home to Arkansas. Okay. Alabama played Houston, who's at 10, played Purdue, who's at 11, played and won at A&M, who's 12. We've got Missouri on the schedule later. They're up to 14. Ole Miss, Alabama lost to. And again, I said it again on our text chain today. That is still the outlier of the college basketball season to me. That game, there was something wrong with our team, something in the water. So they just looked glassy-eyed. They weren't into it for whatever reason, or they were sick, or there was some kind of mental hiccup. I don't know what it was, but I would play Ole Miss again in a heartbeat and feel pretty good about it. Mississippi State at 20, even though they're on like kind of a losing streak now.
They're fading. They're at that. Seasons we talk about all the time. Seasons are roller coasters. You know, it's up and it's down. Mississippi State's they're down. They'll probably be up again at some point. They're in a down. Yikes.
Yeah, they are. And then, of course, there's also Oregon who Alabama's played and lost to. And again, that's another game I'd love to have back. If Alabama losing to 2 teams that start with O, and that seems weird to me because we're better than they are, and we should have won both of those games. And that sort of tells you how hard it is to play a schedule. And you know, that's why I give Auburn a lot of credit, because they only have that one loss at Duke, and it's pretty difficult to do. And I hate giving them credit, as you well know. But anyway, I just wanted to say that because I think it's just incredible what's going on, especially in this state. But regardless, and I know I shouldn't say it's incredible because I told you earlier, quit being surprised by it. And incredible implies that I'm surprised by it, and I should quit doing that too. All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast and rambling. We'll get you guys tomorrow. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.